Hi Marc, welcome to your Quickie chart reading. Thank you so much for trusting me to do this for you. I'm honored to help in any way that I can. Before we get started, as a little disclaimer, I think it's important to let my clients know that astrology is a discipline that's up for interpretation. My intuitive insight into your birth chart may look a little bit different than someone else's. Yes, there are undeniable patterns and clear correlations, but the way in which those patterns and correlations are defined and dissected, that's where each unique intuition comes into play. So that's kind of where I'm coming from in my interpretation, but please rest easy as I do have a good 16 or so years of studying under my belt to help bolster that interpretation. And also it's important to mention the whole natal chart is really complex. There are layers upon layers upon layers to sift through to find out what truly makes each person unique. So I can only cover so much within the time constraints of these little readings, but I try to take as practical of an approach as possible. So please let me know your honest feedback if I was able to accomplish that for you. And just a fair warning, I usually end up going way over my time limits, so I hope that's not an issue for you. I blame my Mercury chart ruler. As Virgo risings, we're notorious for talking a lot. Whenever you see a really long comment on social media, that person's probably a Virgo rising. But anyway, this isn't about me. Let's get to your burning questions, shall we? So here we have your chart. Oh my gosh, look at that first house. Okay, I don't know how deep your astrology knowledge goes, but and I promise I'll get to your reading in just a second, but this is just really intriguing. We've got Venus, Neptune, Ceres, Jupiter, Uranus, and your sun all kind of hanging out in a cluster here. Having outer planets in your most personal house, the first house, makes those energies a lot more individual to your experiences. We also have Mercury in the gang, but he's in the 12th house, so he's a bit more subdued and hidden where he's at. But this is a really neat cluster. I have to resist the urge to do a deep dive into everything going on here, but I will be mentioning pieces of it in relation to what you asked me to go over, because it does play a part. So you requested a career reading. Oh, I absolutely love these. It actually makes a lot of sense that you want to dive into this because you are a Capricorn rising after all, and you're seeking balance. Of course, you're a Libra moon. So on the topic of career in astrology, we mainly look at the 10th house and the midheaven, or the big MC that you see on your chart. MC just stands for medium coli, but we also refer to it as the midheaven. They're all interchangeable terms. So the houses of the zodiac wheel all represent different areas of our lives. So how we view ourselves, what we value, what we communicate and process, or rather how we process information, what our home life was like, our approach to health, how we approach long-term relationships. Every house represents something different. And the 10th house represents the career, long-term goals, discipline, and structure. The public reputation in terms of how you work, which naturally makes it one of the houses of fame and status. So the 10th house is ruled by Capricorn and Saturn. And then, like I said, we also look at the midheaven, or MC, which will usually always fall in someone's 10th house on their chart. So they kind of go together. The MC represents what you're trying to accomplish and build with your life, how you gain success and status, your soul's purpose, if you will, what you want to be known as contributing to the world. And then if I have time, I personally also like to peek at where Virgo and Capricorn are on the chart, as well as Capricorn's ruler Saturn, and how these three placements are interacting with everything else. So I do this because Virgo and Capricorn are said to be arguably the hardest workers of the zodiac. They speak to daily routines, organization, professionalism, discipline and structure, so effective and meticulous hard work as opposed to just brute strength type of work, if that makes sense. And then the houses that those signs rule in your chart point to areas of your life that these energies show up in. So in your case, that's the first house, the house of self and identity with Capricorn there, and then the 9th house, which is your Virgo house, and that's the house of philosophy and higher education. So in your reading, I'll just give you an overview of your 10th house, your MC, and what it means to be a Scorpio midheaven. And then I'll dissect the three aspects to to your midheaven, which I'm hoping will help us kind of figure out where you might be feeling conflicted on your path and how you can work towards fulfillment in your long-term career goals. So if you aren't familiar with aspects in the natal chart, it just refers to the distance in degrees between planets and luminaries and other astral items, like asteroids and stuff like that. We classified them as hard and easy aspects, and they're exactly what they sound like. It just speaks to the energy exchange between the items that we're looking at. So is the exchange difficult and riddled with challenges, or is it an easy flowing kind of energy and comes naturally without much effort? So we'll go over those in detail. So first up, we have your 10th house. Now Libra rules your 10th house of career. You want to support and help other people. You see relationships as integral to business. You may even be good with design and creativity. Libra can excel in technology as well, and networking, especially because Libra is all about relationships. It rules the 7th house with Venus. And that just, Venus goes to, it points towards who and what we value. Taurus being what we value, and then Libra being who we value. Venus rules them both. So Libra brings people together and it values community. So you love to work, and you may struggle to find a balance between work and home life, with an emphasis on work spilling into the home. Libra is the scales, so it really esteems fairness and balance, but it can struggle to establish what that means on a personal level, with having Libra ruling one of the non-personal houses, that 10th house. But both Libra 10th house and your Scorpio, midheaven indicate that you seek and expose truth. You aren't one for tolerating dishonesty or troublemakers, and you may become known in your reputation for those qualities. Your midheaven, like I mentioned, is in Scorpio, and when we talk about the midheaven or MC, we also need to look at its opposite end, which is called the IC or Imam Coli. It's not labeled on this chart, but you can see a little blue line, and that is your IC right there in the sign of Taurus. So you can kind of envision it like this. The bottom half of the chart speaks to our childhood, how we related to our families and our neighborhoods, our daily routine and learning the foundations of life, essentially. And then the top half of the chart speaks to what becomes of that, how we build on what we learned and what we were taught, whether that was positive or negative, how to relate in relationships as we grow, and how we relate to society, how we find our place within the collective. And remember, the MC specifically represents what you want to be known as contributing to the world and your success, right? What do you want to build with your life? So Taurus, I see at its roots, is just naturally stubborn. This can indicate that maybe you had a bit of a controlling parent, one or both, but parents that made sure you grew up, or one parent, if that was your situation. So you had at least one parent that made sure you grew up in a beautiful, secure home, that you had somewhat nice things. The 4th house is ruled by Cancer and the moon, and the 4th house is just about inner security, the home you grew up in, nurture, instinctual, emotional nature. You don't just want security in your home, you need it at your core. That's all Taurus energy. A strong foundation is non-negotiable. So Taurus is earth and it's fixed. It's steady and immovable, stubborn and willful. It has staying power and perseverance. It doesn't like change, and sometimes may even actively try to avoid it. So Taurus energy can find a lot of growth in learning to let things unfold naturally and finding comfort in change and kind of loosening those white knuckles off of controlling things. Taurus IC is also, interestingly enough, known for building collections of nice things and sometimes showing them off. Like when people come over, they always want to look at your collections. I know offhand 3 people that have a Taurus IC, and all 3 of them are avid gun collectors, and they do endless amounts of research when it comes to anything related to that topic. And if you don't collect things, you might collect delicious or fancy food or wine. Taurus is all things sensual enjoyment. Think 5 senses. That's big for Taurus. So that's just a tiny sneak peek of the launching pad that your Scorpio MC is building on. Scorpio's verb is I desire, and as a Scorpio MC, there's an I will create what I need type of energy. You're no stranger to hard work. In fact, you're known and recognized for it. When people think of you, your work ethic and drive are probably among the first things that they think of. So you're probably not a big fan of unprofessionalism. And I did notice quite a few areas of really exceptionally high intelligence in your chart. So you have the skills to build a monumental career. Scorpio energy is very private and deep and moving, and some people can mistake that for vindictive secrecy, but it's not always like that. Scorpio just doesn't wear its heart on its sleeve. It certainly has the potential, certainly, to revel in negative energy, but that's true for literally anybody, for any sign, any house, anything, So Scorpio has an I want to study you, but I don't necessarily want you to study me kind of energy to it. So it's important that Scorpio midheavens are honest about who and what they are, what they bring to the table in terms of career, and what they're capable of, because Scorpio is notorious for getting in too deep, spreading themselves too thin, and then becoming overwhelmed. Having the MC, your public image and purpose, in a water sign indicates that your public persona is not steadfast and firm. It shifts like water ebbs and flows. You may experience death and regeneration in your career more than once throughout your lifetime. And with that comes the wisdom to know what to share and what not to share in the public arena, because you don't know what could or may be used against you. Scorpio can be wise and give some really good advice to others, but it doesn't like to reveal much of itself within giving that advice. It might tell stories of other people to kind of help someone that they're talking to, but they won't give they're not likely, I should say, to give personal experience as reasoning for the advice that they give, if that makes sense. So I wonder if you would enjoy or find fulfilling creating an outlet for yourself, something like an old school newspaper advice column, or the more modern version, an anonymous social media account of some kind of way to give advice to others. It allows for you to keep your distance, which Scorpio appreciates and kind of needs, but it also gets out what you think the world needs to know. The idea here is just finding an outlet of giving out that knowledge that you gain, especially when it comes to dark or taboo topics. And Jupiter, the teacher and philosopher in us, is in your first house, indicating that you're a really good and competent teacher. That's also confirmed by your Sagittarius 12th house and your 12th house Mercury. But due to time constraints, I can't get too deep into those in today's reading. But just know the force is with you if you want to be a teacher. Scorpio investigates and just knows what's going on around them, but Scorpio energy does not want people to dig too deeply into them, like we just talked about. And that seems to stem from an insecurity of not feeling accepted at their core of who they are. Scorpio wants to be accepted and included, but it doesn't always like to admit that. Scorpio energy prefers to be seen as distant and wanting it that way, like a lone wolf, brooding and deep, too deep for anyone to understand. And this energy is manifesting in your career and work life. But, honestly, I'm personally convinced that Scorpio deep down desperately wants to be figured out. But not just by anybody, just the right person, the one that Scorpio respects above all others, because they don't just listen to anybody. You need to see wisdom in someone in order to respect them and to respect their hustle. Scorpio midheavens can be sort of treated like a well for others to just dump their secrets into, because Scorpio is really good at keeping secrets. They keep the family secrets and they keep work secrets just the same as they get older. Sometimes that can be overwhelming, feeling like you know too much about your coworkers, or maybe that they know too much about you, in which case you might feel the urge to leave that career or position and start fresh somewhere else more than once. The purpose Scorpio MC needs to focus on is providing security to others and to find a balance in that desire to control. Yes, it may feel draining sometimes, but in order to weather that storm, you need a firm, strong, and steadfast home life. That Taurus IC, right? Whatever that means for you, whether it's your blood relatives as family, or the family you choose as in your friends, or the family you create through marriage and having kids, or a mixture of all of the above. Family is completely subjective, right? But the home life is so important for you because that's your base, that's your roots, and strong roots create a strong tree, right? And that Taurus IC craves stability and security more than anything. So when you get your foundation in order, it's much less shaky up there at that Scorpio MC trying to take the career world by storm. You know, when your home life feels unstable, it's really hard to find stability in your career aspirations. And just be careful not to take security from others. Work at creating it and then give it out to those who need it, because the world needs what you have to contribute. It needs your depth of understanding. You may see power as a means to get one up in the career world, but it's important for Scorpio MC to recognize that power comes from within and not in what's taken from others. So again, that Taurus IC needs nurture, and that includes taking breaks from time to time to indulge in the five senses, all the things that Taurus loves. Just experiencing basic pleasure. Remind yourself to refresh yourself regularly. Work is a big theme in your life, and you know, if you're not actively investing in recuperating from all that hard work, it's going to spell disaster, you know, like a house of cards with a foundation kicked out from underneath it. Scorpio misguided finds its value in what power it has over other people and things, and how much and how deeply it can control. And I would just encourage to keep an eye out for that, because, you know, investing into that kind of energy can create an unstable foundation for not only understanding yourself, but understanding your place and your place within, you know, the collective, and how you can get success with that MC. Scorpio midheavens can really struggle with truly loving who they are at their core and feeling like they're worthy of love for who they truly are, like they have nothing to contribute to the collective, you know, and that's unfortunate, because it couldn't be further from the truth, you know. But then on the flip side, Scorpio and its higher functioning energy provides connection and wisdom and depth to broken people. So this is the energy of your midheaven in Scorpio, and, you know, possibly some challenges you may encounter to one degree or another along your career path. So now we know about the 10th house, and now we know about your MC. So let's cover the aspects to find out what may be blocking you from feeling like you're doing the right thing with those areas of your chart. So first up, we have your sun squaring your midheaven. So the sun rules the 5th house of Leo, and it represents everything that you see listed here. It's your identity, your ego, how you show your personality. Wherever your sun falls in your chart is where you want to shine the brightest, to stand out. And in this case, that is your 1st house of self, your identity, initiation, first impressions, how you immediately interact with the world around you. So the 1st house is the house of Aries, and it's ruled by Mars. It can even speak to how some people appear. For example, Capricorn risings are said to be very angular in their facial features, kind of a stern expression, not old by any means, just kind of a serious resting face, like they're always studying something very intently. They're usually pretty tall and slender, but surprisingly strong, kind of not what you expect when you first see them. That's the general idea of what is commonly said that Capricorn risings look like. Now, it's not necessarily true for everyone, of course, and that's the great thing about astrology. It's completely individualistic. Everyone is different and totally unique. You know, for instance, I have a brother with this placement. He's a Capricorn rising, and he's not really slender. He's tall, yes, but he works out a lot, so he's also really, really muscular. And he does have an angular face. He's actually a model, but he works in landscaping and construction kind of as his day job, if you will. So he's very like tough and grounded, but he's also like, you know, he's got those, you know, angular bits about him too. And then see, my husband is also a Capricorn rising, and he is really thin and tall and slender, but he's also really strong. So that's kind of interesting to see the similarities and differences and how that shows up for people. So I don't know if you relate to those things, but that's kind of what that indicates. So anyway, back to what I was saying. So your Aquarius 1st house sun coming into a hard square aspect to your MC. So square aspects occur when two items on the chart are separated by 90 degrees. And square aspects are said to be hard, and they speak to, you know, a struggling mix of energies. It's challenging to get these areas of life to meld nicely together. So I like to think of it as, you know, they're squaring up. They're about to go at it. You know, they stress each other out and can cause anxiety in the chart, and just a general feeling of discomfort. So this is your sun, which rules everything we just went over, not really getting along with your goals and your purpose, your success, your MC. So you may find it difficult to satisfy your ego within your career, or like you haven't found your identity in your career yet. Like you can't really be yourself, and or your career may feel like it's snuffing out your identity. Maybe you feel like you're becoming just another number, and you're losing your identity in that shuffle. So this can be really challenging for a number of reasons on the practical side of things, but it can also contribute to that Scorpio feeling of not truly being accepted at your core. You may find a lot of freedom busting out of that realm that's feeling like the walls are closing in around you. Scorpio isn't like Leo, where, Leo is meant to stand out and be the center of attention. But Scorpio does have that steadfastness about it that can literally move Earth when it needs to. So this square is water and air coming together in a clash. Now, water and air collaborate by bringing the emotions and the mind together in harmony. So your Aquarius air sun might resist the emotional nature of that water Scorpio MC, meaning the ego may feel boxed in or like naturally averse toward using emotional depth when it comes to your career. But anywhere a square is on the chart shows great room for growth. A hard aspect is a beautiful thing to build upon once you can recognize where it is in your life, how it manifests for you specifically, it's the strength of its manifestation, and then what you can do about growing and maturing in those areas. They're not a death sentence by any means, and easy aspects aren't always positive either. Easy aspects just speak to a flowing energy that happens without much effort of the person going through it, which, as you can probably imagine, can be terrible when it comes to a terrible person, that finds awful things easy to do, if that makes sense. So anyway, next up we have your first house Aquarius Uranus squaring your midheaven. Okay, I know I'm skipping over that Mercury to MC sextile because I like to end on a positive note, so I'm saving that one for last. But Uranus rules the 11th house of Aquarius, and it represents everything that you see listed here. It's our uniqueness, our weirdo energy, if you will. It represents revolution among the community. Uranus is an outer planet, so it usually speaks to larger groups rather than just us, our immediate family and friends and neighborhood. It's about more of the collective as a whole. But for your chart, you have a handful of outer planets in your first house of self. So that tends to make that energy much more personal for you. So we went over the general nature of the square aspect, but in this case, it's your individuality coming into a clash with your MC, your purpose and your goals for life. Again, it's a stressful situation between your career aspirations and your uniqueness. So this also means that your Uranus and Sun are conjunct each other. Since both of them individually square your MC. So they're really, really close to each other. They're within about 3.5 degrees of each other. Conjunctions are when two energies literally fuse together. It's hard to see the energies distinctly when they're right on top of each other, for the person experiencing that, okay? So it's like, when you mix blue and yellow paint to make green, you can't really pull them back apart after they've been mixed together, right? So this is your right to be yourself, your Uranus, mixing right into your ego. This can sometimes indicate a sort of a know-it-all energy that can be hard to teach and to claim authority over. So that difficulty of teaching is more prevalent in earth sign suns, but both your Sun and Uranus are in Aquarius. So being an air sign, you're slightly more open to other people's input and knowledge and that exchange of information. But these two parts of you coming together indicate you probably work better when you can be kind of self-guided and kind of on your own. You can dictate your own workload, your own schedule, or complete lack thereof. Uranus likes to go with the flow if it wants to. And that could mean waking up and working from 2 a.m. till 8 and then completely shifting gears, doing something completely different all day, and then coming back later to finish out the day's work when it suits you better, if that makes sense. So Uranus is very much bent on being set apart. So you may have left your home environment really early in your life because you wanted to express that individuality without constraint. So thinking back to that Taurus IC that we went over earlier, the idea of a steady, secure home life may feel a little bit foreign to you. So you may be susceptible to struggling in knowing what a firm stable foundation even looks like for you. But see, that's the beauty here, because you can absolutely create what you feel safe within. It takes a lot of time and just sitting with yourself and being with yourself and really, really reflecting, using the feedback of other people to reflect on how you are being received in the world around you, if that makes sense. So you need autonomy and the ability to practice innovation within your career and to not have to answer to anyone. Uranus isn't a big fan of authority figures or wanting to be tied down to a set way of doing things. You sort of feel like you can guide and lead yourself. You don't really need an authority figure to tell you what to do. Uranus can struggle to have integrity and can struggle to compromise. You say you're going to do something and then completely change your mind, do something else. So it can be kind of hard for people to follow you and know what to expect from you. So like I said, it's difficult for the people on the receiving end of this energy. You do respond to ultimatums, though, when they bring you insight into yourself, because you may kind of be unaware of the effect that you have on others until they bring it to your attention, of course. So that's the energy that's sort of resonating from your Sun and Uranus being so close to each other. And both of those are individually conflicting with your career, and that whole energy bubble is conflicting with your career, your success, your purpose. So I wonder if you might find some of this beneficial to enact in your work life, and if it might make your career path a bit more clear to you, knowing what will fit your needs and can really help. That can really help narrow down the options, when we don't quite know which direction to take. Empathy and compromise can be two areas of challenge, but these are also great opportunities for a lot of growth. The right to be yourself is really embedded into your personality and your ego, which is good in the sense that you're not really susceptible to peer pressure or people trying to convince you out of being who you want to be. You don't change unless you want to change. But the sort of in-your-face nature of Uranus in the first house and on the Sun, it can sometimes be a little bit hard to relate to. So finally, we have the sextile easy aspect between your Capricorn Mercury and your Scorpio MC. So when discussing Mercury, I think it's important to mention that the distance between Mercury and the Sun can typically point to how quickly someone's thoughts materialize from the brain to the mouth and then become spoken word. When the Sun and Mercury are really close together, that typically indicates someone who's quick-witted, speaks really, really fast, speaks a lot, usually doesn't have a filter. Whereas when the Sun and Mercury are a bit further apart, such as in your case, it indicates someone who takes their time formulating their thoughts before speaking. And having your Mercury in your 12th house, I have a feeling you don't talk much. Mercury rules the 3rd house of Gemini and the 6th house of Virgo, and it represents everything that you see here. You can pause the video if you'd like to read through this. So we've got a sextile, which is an easy flow of energy between your communication and information processing and everything that Mercury represents, coming into positive, harmonious aspect with your midheaven, your goals and purpose, and the success that you achieve. So a sextile occurs when two items are about 60 degrees apart from each other. These will typically occur within complementary elements. So in this case, it's earth and water coming together. Water nourishes earth. It provides sustenance and life to earth. Earth is unmoving and in a human sense kind of detached and unemotional. Whereas water is immersive and literally the epitome of emotion. So everything that Mercury represents coming into positivity and harmony with everything your midheaven represents, this is something you can really capitalize on when it comes to your career. This indicates that you would be incredible at something that involves really technical work, some type of communication. And if the midheaven is the success that we gain in life, this can actually soften a little bit of that Uranus urge to resist authority figures, and it goes and goes against the grain, right? Something else interesting to note here is that this sextile has the potential to soften some other hard aspects that we went over earlier too. The ones that indicate the difficulty between balancing home and work life. So you mentioned feeling conflicted between being true to yourself and doing what you know is more socially rewarding. And, when we talk about our place within the social collective, we typically look at the 11th house, the house of Aquarius, the house of friends, the house of community. And you've got Pluto here. Pluto has a way of darkening what it comes into contact with on the chart. It can create a bit of a blind spot. And Pluto is sometimes literal, sometimes figurative. For example, people with Pluto in the first house, often have dark hair and dark eyes, and they tend to endure considerably more hardship and death in their lives than most people. And then someone with Pluto in the third house may find it intriguing to discuss dark matters, taboo or even scary things that not a lot of people like to dive into. So Pluto in the 11th house, like in your case, may indicate people feeling intimidated by you. And you may experience power plays within your social groups, and people naturally want to dominate over you because of that intimidation factor that you kind of incite in others. So that may help to keep that in mind, because it may give you a little bit of insight that you may not have previously had. That way, when you're confronted with a situation in this area of your life that seems to kind of come out of left field, you can be a little more prepared to be patient with people who are intimidated by you and try to be sort of diplomatic so they can understand your true intentions and not take what you do or say defensively and in the wrong way. You're driven by a deep need for balance and harmony, and you seek to use your diligent nature to create lasting social changes. So, all of this brings us to a close. I felt like it went by so fast. I really hope this was helpful for you and easy to understand and follow. You may want to rewatch and kind of divide it up into pieces because it's a lot to digest all at once. And of course, I went over my time. I'm so sorry. There's just so much to cover. But overall, my questions to you would be, what do you want to do? What makes you really feel fulfilled and at peace at the end of the day when it comes to your career? Motivation is just an emotion. It's fleeting. And money, we all know, is just not a fulfilling goal in and of itself. We know the true valuable things in life are relationships, and you've got the skills to really bring people together and to do it in a way that makes sense, is wrapped in intelligence, dipped in depth, and delivered right at the moment that it's needed the most. You're not your natal chart. You get to choose the trajectory of your life. So, don't take any of this information as a death sentence or a magic potion, because in truth, it's neither. Your Venus speaks to what will make you feel satisfied. So you may find some good information when you dive into that. Or hey, you could even order another chart reading for Venus specific insight. Selfless plug, but hey, it's true. Speaking of which, I'm actually now offering a little deal on follow-up readings, and you can find all of that information in the details in the description box below. So thank you again, Marc, so much for letting me do this for you. And I just hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. All right, peace.